What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from Pink Tourmaline. And today we're kind of doing a follow-up of the video yesterday. We're going down a rabbit hole here. And the rabbit hole was prompted by the video that I made in regards to David Icke and his assertion that we're in like a double simulation. So let me just recap what his main theory is. And it caused me some distress, and I wanted to go through it and talk about it and analyze it and discuss it because I don't want to run from information that makes me uncomfortable, obviously. And as I've mentioned multiple times on this channel, this is an exploration. I don't claim to be 100% right on any of the stuff that I'm mentioning, but I'm just trying to approach everything with an open mind as best as I can. Well, the main idea behind David Icke's theory is that he's examined a lot of near-death experiences, and he gives them a lot of credibility. He talks about how there's tons of them and they're well documented, and I agree. I think they do have tremendous value in terms of their insights into what is beyond this life and why are we here, because most of these people come back with that information. Well, anyways, what David Icke said is that when we pass on or when we have near-death experiences and come back, or then when we eventually finally pass on, we go to a place that we think is the ethereal, the astral plane, where our soul, our consciousness can reconnect with the ethereal, where we're really from. But what he says and what he thinks is that it's actually all a big trick. It's all a big ploy by the same dark entities that are trying to keep us contained in a cycle of negativity on this planet. They also run this little astral realm when we first leave our bodies. They keep us there. They keep us in like an AI-based system, and they kind of manipulate us and convince us that we have more lessons to learn. And hence we go back and we repeat the cycle over and over. Like we're basically trapped in a cycle. Now, granted, we still have the free will to exit this cycle, but we are convinced or manipulated to keep re-entering under the guise of, yes, you have more to learn. You have more ways to grow. So you got to keep going back, when that's not true. That's what his basic conclusion is. Now, I said when I analyzed this idea, I said that it didn't make complete sense to me for a couple of reasons. Number one, and this I can't really back up, but my feeling is that once we are free of this body and the limitations of the body, mentally and physically, there is no like deception anymore. Now we just have clear connection. We can see truth, and we can see deception and honesty, and a lot of the difficulties we have on this planet because maybe of our physical form or our limitations, that doesn't exist in the ethereal. Now, this is more of like my thought process, just what I think makes sense. Like we come out and everything that we're confused about or don't know about or manipulated by, that all goes away. So that was my first thought. But again, that's just me thinking of in terms of logic, what makes logical sense to me from everything that I've listened to and heard thus far. That could be wrong. But the other thing is that he said David Icke's entire the foundation of his argument is that we are here and we are forced into these cycles of negativity. Like the reason why the world is run by essentially like a group of corrupt people, or why they continue to want to wreak havoc and start wars and do all this stuff, is because the negative energy emitted from people when they're going through distress, anger, guilt, fear, all these negative emotions, that vibration is then used as an energy source for other low vibrational beings. And so it's just one big trick to keep us like coming back and reincarnating so that they can just keep feeding off of us. But the problem I had with that theory is that, well, most of the people that come back from near-death experiences, they don't like say, oh, gloom and doom, or they're not preaching a message of like keeping us in the cycle. That's what doesn't make sense to me. They're all coming back and preaching a message of positivity, of love. That's what we need to latch onto. We need to be kind to each other. So if that's truly like all just one big attempt to manipulate us, why are they coming back with this message of positivity? It just seems too convoluted. Like that would actually destroy this food source for these entities. I'm not saying that there aren't potential entities that are feeding off of negative vibrations or energies. Like I haven't looked into it enough to discount that. That could be the case. But where I felt that this theory lost me is that there's manipulation outside of the body and outside of the physical. That's where it lost me, and that's why I disagree with it. Well, anyways, this led me down a rabbit hole because he referenced Robert Monroe, and that's somebody that I'm quite familiar with. And he has a institute that he founded called the Monroe Institute in Virginia. As I mentioned in that video, I'll mention it again. It's a place that I really want to go to and learn about consciousness, about out-of-body experiences, and all these interesting topics that are touched upon at the Monroe Institute, where Robert Monroe was a big pioneer. But David Icke mentioned Robert Monroe and some of the work that he did and the studies that he performed in support of his theory. Well, somebody in the comments, I believe it was Edmundo, if I'm remembering that correctly. Anyways, I want to give you a shout out that posted this video. This is a video of Robert Monroe talking kind of about this idea of why we are quote unquote like trapped in this reincarnation cycle, but he frames it much differently. It still doesn't really resonate with me exactly, but we're going to play the clip and I'm going to show you what he's talking about, because again, I want to just explore this avenue, and it is like an unsettling idea that we're kind of reincarnating. Like that, it's a similar idea that we're reincarnating not because we should, but because we're kind of stuck. And the idea is to eventually break away from this reincarnation cycle that's not really doing us any good, compared to what most people say, or pretty much all people say that I've heard in NDEs, or what they talk about in the journey of souls, is that we're reincarnating for a purpose, for the purpose of advancing our soul, for experiencing different trials and tribulations that are specifically designed for the inadequacies, you could say, or deficiencies of our current soul, so we can level up and keep raising our vibration. Like there's a point to every life, versus we're just stuck and we're just pawns being manipulated. That the narrative that there is a reason to why we reincarnate, I think that resonates more with me. That makes more sense, although it's also the more pleasant of the two options. So maybe I'm just choosing what makes me happier. I don't know. But anyways, let's get into the mix now, and let's watch this clip and let's discuss it and chop it up. So first of all, who was Robert Monroe, if you're not familiar? So he's an American radio and media executive who became a major figure in consciousness exploration after he began reporting spontaneous out-of-body experiences. He documented these experiences and built a research and training organization that became known as the Monroe Institute, as I mentioned, in Virginia, and helped develop the Hemi-Sync and audio method using binaural beats, which I have looked into for helping people sleep, intended to guide the brain into specific repeatable states of relaxation and focused attention. The Gateway program, often experienced through the Gateway tapes, is the Monroe Institute structured training sequence that uses guided narration plus layered audio cues to move listeners through progressive focus levels. In plain terms, it's a step-by-step mental training course designed to make it easier for people to consistently reach deep meditative and expanded awareness states, sometimes interpreted by participants as out-of-body experiences or non-ordinary perception. Like very, 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 very cool stuff. Now, I think I don't know if this is substantiated or not, but I believe he was working for the government at one point, whether it's the CIA or another organization. I'm not sure. That didn't come up in the bio, but I believe he has discussed that. Don't quote me on that. Okay. But this guy's research, he was a pioneer. He did all sorts of amazing things. And this is what he had to say in an interview. Now, he passed away in 1995. I'm not sure what year this was filmed, but this is him talking about this reincarnation cycle, this fact that we seem to be the reason why we keep reincarnating is not for any good reason, but because we are addicted to being human. And he's basically saying that what we lack to break the cycle is something called escape velocity, which is obviously a term in physics. So we're going to listen to this, and I'm going to chop it up and respond as we go through.
We're all, as I like to put it, going home with all this bag full of goodies, as it were, to take home and show the local boys how much you've learned and what you can do. The only problem is that when we do this, we forget something that happens, as again on the way to the store, that we don't expect. What's that? Well, if you know about it, then you can have fun. It's where you don't know about it is where it gets dangerous. And that is that we become addicted to being human. And so after we exit this particular life sojourn, we're saying, instead of going home and what I call having escape velocity to go home, something's happened in living that life. We've picked up a load factor. There was friction along the way, and that represents it. So instead of moving out and having escape velocity, we start turning around that, and it's our decision, no one else's. That's the important thing, our decision. We say, well, I think I'll go back just once more. And then this next time, I think I'll be a male instead of a female. That ought to.
So what he's saying by load factor, if this isn't making sense, what he's trying to say is, in our experience in this life or whatever life we live, there are certain experiences maybe that we didn't have that seem interesting to us, but we didn't get to experience it. So we say, you know what? I want to experience what I missed out in the last life. I'm going to go back one more time. Let me, like, I saw this one guy had this amazing life and he got to live in this place or whatever. I want to go back and live that life. So you come back, you do that. And then in that life, you see something else that was interesting or caught your fancy. It's like, you know what? I want to come back one more time. This is what he's talking about, the load factor. So as you're leaving this orbit of Earth, it's like, no, you're getting these ideas or motivations to come back and experience something else. And that keeps drawing you more and more into this like repetitive cycle of wanting to keep experiencing this and that and the other thing. So that's what he's trying to say. And this is what he's saying. He's like, we still have the free will to escape. You always do. You always have the choice. But that choice is kind of not like in the way that David Icke saying, but kind of manipulated by our own experiences, by just the desire to keep wanting to live different permutations of a human life.
It'll be more fun. Just once more, and then I'll go home. So what happens is, instead of moving this way, we loop around and go back being a human again, and go back and have another human experience, another lifetime, and we come out again, and we're already this time, but this time we've had even a greater load factor, don't you see? We've slowed up a little more. We haven't got the speed that we did. We have a greater load, and so we're now in orbit, and we have a decaying orbit, because when we come up around the orbit like this, instead of going on, we say, oh, I got to go back, because I have never seen Paris, and I'd like to go to Paris for once in my life, and I'd like to just go there. So whole purpose to go back and live again, so that I can go to Paris. And I've heard so much about Paris, I want to go to Paris. So I'll go and live again so I can go to Paris. And as you can see, each time you pick up in each succeeding lifetime a greater load factor, so that as you go through this, your orbit decays more and more as you go through this, living these successive lives, until you get locked in tighter and tighter and tighter, till you are locked in being human so tight that you forget where you came from. You've lost all of the desire to even depart and go home.
Now, when he's talking about you forget where you came from, I believe what he's referring to is what some people call the ethereal, the astral plane, the whatever place where our consciousness lives outside of the physical realm, outside of the physical universe. So the real place where all of us are truly, truly from.
You've lost it all, because this is so overwhelmingly addictive that you can't think of anything else but this time, space, physical matter, all the things that take place in there. And no matter how hard you try, you can't get away from it. The reason being, there's no law, but when you, quote, die, and instead of going home, you make the decision. There's no law that says you have to stay here. You are the one who says, I gotta go back. I didn't eat enough steaks. I didn't have enough strawberries. I didn't have enough children, all these kinds of things, or I didn't have enough sex. Anyway, that's how we lock in as being human. In so doing this, now the next trick is, well, what happens? Well, why don't we recognize this more and more? Because we are so deeply addicted. So we develop an excuse, which you call belief systems, to rationalize this process. But it's all done in this local traffic human terms. This is the difference. As a result, somewhere along the way, you begin to find cracks in the belief system. You begin to find reasons that don't work quite well. That's the analytical thing coming into it. It says, hey, wait a minute, something wrong here. This doesn't work out. 2 and 2 makes 6. No, wrong. Try again. You begin to find out that there are some holes in the cracks. And that's when you begin to regrow and begin to, so that successively you begin to start on your way out again. And you begin to have a higher and higher orbit as you learn more. And in these successive lives, till finally you got escape velocity, and then you do go home.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack there. I think what he's saying in the end is that when we get mired in these different belief systems, I don't know if he's talking about religious belief systems or just societal belief systems or different things like that. But I guess when you get stuck in those and trapped in those, that's when the orbit gets tighter and tighter. And then I guess eventually as you break free of those systems of beliefs, whether he's talking about religions or like I said, societal beliefs, then you can start to reach that escape velocity and eventually leave. Now, I can see that. Like maybe to some extent, the point of reincarnating is is breaking away from all the kind of like the craziness that we see on this planet. A lot of things that maybe if you're watching this channel or you're into this type of material, you've already broken away to some extent from the spells or the belief systems that are kind of like forced upon us from a young age. So, and then maybe liberating yourself from that allows you to eventually return home for once and for all. I could see that. But the thing about the going back to his notion of becoming addicted to being human, that doesn't really make sense to me from the standpoint of what we hear from like almost all NDEs is that when they do actually leave, most of them when they're told, sorry, that hey, your time's not up and you need to go back. Most people don't want to go back. So there's not like an addiction to being human or like, oh my God, I want to do more. I want to live more of this life. Like they don't want to. They want to stay. They usually want to stay in the ethereal and the astral. So that's the part that doesn't really make sense to me. But I'm very curious to know why he's saying this. You know, this is just a quote, a video, but I'd love to know where does this theory stem from? Is this stem from lots of out-of-body experiences or discussions with other people, like discussions with other entities, deep meditation? Like I want to know where this comes from because I don't really see a lot of people talking about this who've had NDEs. Now, the explanation could be for that most people that are having NDEs, they're intentionally not made aware of this because it is some sort of like manipulative cycle that we're stuck in. I don't know though. It doesn't, this narrative, this idea, it doesn't really resonate with me. I'm not sure if I'm just not sure if I'm buying into it, if I'm leaning into it. That's my take right now, but I need to learn more about Robert Monroe and his theories and the Monroe Institute. Hopefully I'll learn more as well eventually when I do go there one day. But yeah, that's my initial thoughts right off the bat from this video and in this explanation. My thoughts are that it's not fully convincing me that this is just, whether David Icke says we're kind of trapped in a simulation within a simulation, or as Robert Monroe's putting it, we're addicted to being human. I'm not sure. I still think that what's discussed in NDEs and other books and literature makes more sense to me, meaning we come in always with the intention of raising our vibration and improving. There's always a goal. There's always an objective to each successive life. Another thing that I should also touch upon too, that's mentioned in Journey of Souls. They have a whole section in that book about what happens when you're choosing your next life, when you're choosing your next person. It's not just, hey, I want to go in and experience this life or that life. That process is not described that way in that book, which a lot of those testimonies or accounts are from people undergoing deep hypnosis, and they're kind of like recalling these memories in the lives between lives. I think that's like the subtitle. And the process of choosing a new life has nothing to do with, I want to experience this or I want to experience that. It's like, we're going to put you in, we're thinking about this as a great option for you because this will give you this type of relationship with your parents, that type of relationship with other people around you. You're going to be you're going to have a difficult life, and that's going to give you great empathy based on what you did to that person and this life, whatever, right? Like there's usually there's a thought out process, and they're also kind of given a preview of how their life is going to look like. And there's also like a staging area that's discussed. This is all in the book. Okay. So I'm just describing what's in this book, an amazing book, by the way. But there's also an area where you kind of like with the people, with the other entities or souls or beings that you're going to interact with in that life. So I'm just saying that doesn't really mesh with what Robert Monroe or David Icke is saying. So that's where I stand right now. I think I'm more inclined to go back to my original theory that is in line with what people describe in NDEs and what's discussed in these other books. But again, I'm still exploring. If anybody's watching this and you have more videos to show me or more things that I need to explore, please send it my way. I want to keep learning. I'm going to learn about the pleasant and the unpleasant. I mean, it is what it is. This is a pursuit for truth. So I'm just trying to do my best, and I hope you're enjoying the journey along with me if you're also seeking answers and just trying to figure out what this whole life thing is all about. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.